Well, welcome back, folks, to another AutoCentral show, another week, and SA's number one motoring podcast. And as usual, my name is George Mienie, and I have with me Wandile Sishi in the house. How's it, Wandi?
Yeah, this week I'm literally in the house. So yeah, good to be here. Thanks for once again letting me host with you, George.
No problem, no problem. You're a permanent feature on AutoTrader's show, so you're most welcome. And we've got some interesting lineup this week. But just as a reminder, where can we find the show, Wandi?
So you can find us every morning on cliffcentral.com if you want to listen to our voices.
Every morning?
We're always live streaming every single Monday at 9 a.m. But if you want to see our faces, we're also on YouTube on the AutoTrader SA's YouTube channel. But if you want to listen to us or stream us later on, we're also on Spotify as well as Apple Music. So basically, you pick where you want to hear us and we'll be there.
If you want to see our mugs, go to @AutoTrader SA YouTube channel and you will find the show. So in today's episode, we'll be going over some epic phenomenon that's happening at the moment, and that's got nothing to do with the Twilight Zone or time travel or anything like that. But OEMs and car manufacturers seem to be investing in South Africa. And so we want to unpack what this means for you as a consumer. And later on in the show, we'll also be joined by Chad Lückhoff, our expert motoring journalist, to review the all-new Subaru Forester. And then lastly, as usual, in today's show, we'll be answering some of your motoring burning questions that you list and send us on a regular, actually daily basis. So getting right into it, Wandi, we're going to coin this, I suppose, the money episode. And it's go big or go home. Why are car manufacturers investing in South Africa? Do you have any kind of initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of rare that you get feel-good stories. And I think this week is one of those super feel-good stories. I think once we get deeper into it, you'll understand why I say that and why things are getting really exciting for the South African motoring industry. So I can't wait to just kind of unpack some of those details.
Well, investing in South Africa, you hear in the news all this doom and gloom, and do me a favor, it's not that doom and gloom always, and South African consumer confidence is down, and a whole bunch of fish paste.
This is always bad news, right?
Yeah, it's always bad news. But this is good news.
Yeah, I mean, the motoring industry for me is always good news. Things have been kind of shaken about, but for the most part, I think South Africans are resilient, and a lot of OEMs and manufacturers are proving that with their wallets. So it's really exciting to see some of the things that are happening.
So Ford has confirmed that they are announcing an investment of $1 billion into the next Ranger in South Africa. As a matter of fact, into their Silverton plant, if I'm not mistaken, right, Wandi?
Correct. So
$1 billion. How many rands is that?
15.8 billion, which is more money than I've ever seen. And I don't think I've ever seen an injection that large at one point by any OEM. And for the fact that it's happening during the pandemic shows that for some reason Ford is seeing that South Africa is a place to be. And if you kind of consider the fact that in other regions, they're actually pulling out of some of the markets around the world, and seeing South Africa as a place to be shows a lot of confidence and a lot of good things that are going to happen for not just the industry, but for consumers as well.
So you mentioned pulling out of other countries. I believe they're pulling out of Brazil, right?
Correct. They recently just closed down 3 factories in Brazil, essentially letting go of about 5,000 people. So, it's not just Brazil. In the US, similar thing has been happening. So, it's when these things kind of happen to an African country, it's huge. I think it's huge, and it shows that it's not just doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Some things are good.
Well, I mean, for me, it's exciting because 60% of our local manufacture is exported. We're a net exporter of cars, not a net importer. We're a net exporter of cars. But the vast majority of what we make in South Africa goes overseas. Now, I'm wondering, why is Ford making this investment? They're pulling out of Brazil. They're closing down other plants, affecting 5,000 jobs in other territories. And in this Silverton move, they're creating roughly 1,200 new jobs. So, why are they doing it? Is it just because they want to manufacture the Ford Ranger here?
That's the question that I've been asking myself. Why pull out of other regions and then invest so much money into South Africa? But when you look at Ford and the impact and the love that South Africans have for the Ford model, for instance, I think the Ford Ranger, the car that they're kind of basing this on, is the 5th most searched car in South Africa. A year ago, it was the most sold used car. So I think it's coupled with the fact that it's so popular in the region, and also the government is kind of incentivizing these sort of things. And we can see this not just happening with Ford, but other OEMs who operate in South Africa.
Well, Toyota also invests close to about 3 billion rand for the production of the new SUV in their Durban plant, right?
Yeah, and that was just a month ago. So it's not just, just to kind of reiterate that fact, this is the place to be, and a lot of manufacturers are seeing that. Hopefully Tesla can kind of join the party and assist in this.
I don't know.
But
Elon doesn't talk about us enough.
Definitely a place where
Elon doesn't talk about us enough.
Sorry,
he was born in Pretoria, Pretoria boy, but he's never mentioned South Africa. Let's see. Maybe it's just his brain's too full of the good stuff that he's doing. But nonetheless, the Toyota investment of 3 billion rand is going to generate about 2.85 billion rands worth of additional component purchase and create another 1,500 jobs. So 1,200 jobs through this move in Silverton by Ford, and then another 1,500 jobs in the move by Toyota. So what's happening in South Africa that manufacturers see a positive future? Are they in the background gearing up to move to EVs? How difficult is it to turn a plant into an EV production plant? And I did a little bit of digging, to find out what it would take. And apparently it's not that simple. While it takes approximately the same number of workstations to produce an EV to producing an ICE vehicle, it takes about 4 workers to install a module with a piston engine. It takes 6 to install one with an electric motor. So a little bit more effort, I think, for an electric car. And this information comes from the manufacturer of the I-Pace versus the E-Pace. I dug up some detail around the I-Pace versus the E-Pace. And it takes 6 people to install one with an electric motor and 4 people to install one with a piston engine. So a little bit more effort. Electric cars apparently are more complicated in terms of their suspension as well. So installing an electric motor requires 50% more labor input. So I would imagine that retooling or investing in an electric plant or electric manufacturing plant for Ford or for Toyota, for anybody else for that matter, is going to create even more jobs than what we're saying. Yeah.
Precisely. But it's good to see that there's a start in the first place. I think it was last year we saw that Toyota also announced that a large part of their investment was going into the manufacturing of not necessarily EVs, but hybrid vehicles. So that's, there's steps that are being put in place by these manufacturers, which are showing sustainable growth and sustainable sort of investment. It's not just for the next Ranger. I think they do definitely have plans to kind of convert these plants into EV production plants.
You think so? Let's just be clear. We don't know whether they have these plans or not, right? So we're not proposing that we know that they have these plans for EVs. But I'm just taking data from from Jaguar themselves, who have plants around the world that produce both the I-Pace and the E-Pace on the same line.
Yeah, 100%. But these manufacturers, they have some smart people. These are some of the top minds in the business. And if you're going to invest $1 billion USD or 15.8 billion rand, I'm pretty sure you're going to think about these sort of things, and
I'm hoping.
I would like to think with optimism that they are investing in the future, not just a once-off sort of model.
Well, I'm hoping so, because 60% of our manufacture, as I said, goes to exports. I heard the other day that the UK is going to, or is thinking about bringing the 2030 deadline back even more, making it even more strict to bring about the end of the ICE era. And because 60% of our local manufacture is exported, and Ford investing 15.8 billion rand, Toyota investing 3 billion rand, and with those exports being so high, are they thinking about EVs? I'm hoping that they are.
That's the big question. I'm sure we'll get the answer soon. If not, we'll just ask them, and I'm sure they'll be quite open to giving us those details.
But for now, the investment is geared to the Ranger and the Amarok, right?
Correct. Specifically, they've named those two models as the focus ones, at least. But I think on top of that, this means a lot for the consumer as well. These sort of things for the consumer is beneficial as well. It's not just the sort of industry that wins here, but the consumer also wins.
Yes, exactly. And we know that South Africans love cars, and South Africans particularly love bakkies. When do you think South Africa, will start to shift? A very difficult question to answer. The shift to EVs is what I'm talking about. When do you think South Africa will begin shifting to EVs?
It's a tough question. And I think when we released the AutoTrader EV reports, we were trying to understand when the consumer wanted it to shift. And I think that's the bigger question is there a demand? Do South Africans actually want this to happen? And the answer was a resounding yes. But the cost is just too high right now. And these sort of things would assist in, or rather investing in EV plants, for instance, would assist in that sort of shift.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say optimistically 15 years, maybe 10 even.
I'm hoping it's less. I mean, remember, 2030 is less than 9 years away. So, let that settle in for a second. 2030 is less than 9 years away. And because 2030 is less than 9 years away, we don't have a decade. We don't have a decade to get this right. I think that whatever decisions OEMs and government regulation make in 2021 is going to set us up for the future. So whatever happens in those boardrooms that we all don't know about, that's what's going to set us up for being a net importer or a net exporter of electric vehicles into the future. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely 100% agree with you. But I'm optimistic. I really, really do believe that we're going to get there. And I think South Africans want us to get there. And I think the nation and the GDP and just so many things are kind of going to be defined by what happens in the next, 3, 4, or 5 years.
Exactly. It's exciting.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, but we'll be watching closely.
Well, that being said, I'm hoping that more OEMs decide to invest in South Africa because it's good for the consumer, it's good for the OEM, it's cheaper to invest in South Africa. South Africa is the gateway to Africa, and we're nice people.
Yeah, I think we're pretty nice people. We smile a lot.
Talking about that, let's invite our expert journalist Chad Lückhoff into our virtual studio here, and Chad is going to review the Subaru Forester, if I'm not mistaken, and it's been in South Africa for a while, the Subaru Forester, and it's been a bit of a favorite. I mean, who can mistake the Subaru WRX, the Impreza, or the Outback? You don't miss the Subaru sound of that flat engine, right, Chad? How's it? You're on mute.
Get some audio going there, yeah. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, and you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Good. So I ended off that intro with, nobody can mistake the Subaru's sound. Subaru has a particular sound that you'd be able to tell me, if I'm not mistaken, comes from that flat 4 engine.
Yes and no. So they did away with that sort of offbeat rumble, that flat 4 rumble, a good couple of years ago, actually. So unfortunately, the new ones don't quite have that same sort of character. The technical side behind it is that was down to unequal length headers, or their exhaust manifold was unequal in length. That's what caused that pulsing sound. They've since changed, thanks to emissions regulations and the likes, to a slightly more efficient manifold design and header design. And it's now it just sounds like a 4-cylinder, sadly.
Oh, I really liked that sound.
I used to love the Subaru. Growing up, looking at the WRX, for instance, it was, you see that blue and you kind of identify it quite quickly.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, but in recent years, they've kind of dialed back a little bit. So, is this new Forester Sport kind of going to bring back some of the interest that we've lost in recent years?
Well, I'll tell you what, Subaru is definitely hoping for that. And they really are hoping that this is going to be a fresh injection into their range, and is going to, and I think with the marketing drive behind it that they have planned, that this is just going to elevate the profile of the brand in the country. It doesn't have a poor profile. It does get sullied by the youngsters in their WRXs tearing around and being a little obnoxious and that. But I think you can find that in sort of any brand and, sort of area of motoring, whether it's from VW to BMW, Mercedes-Benz, it doesn't matter. You're going to get somebody who's going to sully it. But for the most part, I think they really are hoping that this is going to be a youthful injection into the motoring landscape in South Africa.
I mean, I'm like, my thoughts and recollection of the Subaru, any Subaru, particularly the WRX, is just the car was incredibly quick, and I think my recollection tells me it's because they were the ones driving the turbocharged engine. Probably before even GTI. Got onto the turbocharged drive, but they had the turbocharged engine, and most Subarus were incredibly fast. Is this Subaru as quick?
In short, no, and those glory days are long behind us, sadly. Yes, Subaru does have a illustrious history with, especially in the World Rally circuit, with the WRC, and yes, the Legacy Turbo was probably one of the more prominent all-wheel drive vehicles, and then followed by the Impreza with turbocharging technology. So they have been around the block a few times. They do know what they're talking about when it comes to that. And sadly, the new Forester is not turbocharged.
Oh, goodness. What power plant does it have?
So this is running the FB25D engine, which is a flat 4 engine. It's a 2.5 litre, naturally aspirated though, making 136 kilowatts and 239 Newton meters. And that's now where things get a little sullied, is because it's a little bit down on power. Thankfully, it's up on power over the previous generation. So this is the 5th generation Subaru Forester. The 4th generation was pretty much only made available with a 2-litre engine, and that made a piddly 115 kilowatts and not even 200 Newton meters of torque. And that one put a nasty dent in the brand's reputation. And when you think of the life cycle of vehicles lasting between 6 to 9 years, it becomes a little tricky when you're trying to appeal to the same generation that you were, let's say, 15 years ago. They've moved on. Their motoring requirements have changed. Many of us that are a little bit older, we're going to remember the 190 kilowatt Forester XT, which had like Subaru Impreza WRX underpinnings, all-wheel drive, 2-litre flat 4 turbocharged engine. It was an absolute rocket. I used to see them race that in time trials and autocross and the likes. It was a hellishly quick car. It was fantastic. And then when the 4th generation came along, it sort of just really flattened that all out. 5th generation, I want to say, is a little more of the same, with those glory days sort of behind us, but it's a sign of the times that we live in. Things have just changed, and people aren't as fixated on power as what they were in the past. They'd go for reliability and economy, ease of use and convenience over everything else.
And tell me, the all-wheel drive system that Subaru almost kind of I wouldn't say stole, because I can't prove that it was or wasn't stolen from, but the Audi Quattro was very, very
Yes.
well known for its four-wheel drive system and being able to corner like a beast as a result. And then Subaru had their all-wheel drive system and kind of could do a similar thing. This car, two-wheel drive?
No, it is all-wheel drive.
All-wheel drive.
It is still one of Subaru's claim to fame is the permanent all-wheel drive of their symmetrical all-wheel drive. Pretty much a trademarked sort of technology as well. Yes, built on from the days, if you want to go back and you want to take a look at your Group A racing with Audi in the late 70s with the development of a Quattro that took several years for them to perfect, and that everybody said it wouldn't work, and then eventually it came in and cleaned up, and that of course also led to the development of Group B, which was a historic and
the greatest league of all time.
Makes me all warm and fuzzy inside talking about Group B.
I think we should get Chad on for a special show around historical racing. I think it'd be quite interesting.
Sounds like a love affair.
Yeah,
it definitely is. It was a different era. It wasn't a nanny state era where it was a risky game to play, going out there in these super high-powered vehicles and that. But WRC built on from that when Group B was abolished, and Subaru saw the benefit of the technology, and they employed it in their road cars, and they have ever since. The Forester Sport does have the X-mode symmetrical all-wheel drive, and the X-mode allows for different torque settings, and that'll make it for mud and snow, deep snow and gravel, and vice versa. A combination of those. It has 3 different modes for that. So while it's not quite a low-range system, it does have a torque vectoring, torque biasing system that is rather intelligent and will read the surface and the traction conditions to ensure you get the best grip possible. And that makes the Forester very, very capable off-road, actually.
Lovely.
It sounds like a great car all around. It sounds like you've fallen in love with this vehicle.
So I have to say, much like you, I am very much a Subaru fanboy, but my job does require me to go into everything with a clean slate and leave my own preconceived notions of a particular brand aside and assess it. So I can take my favorite brand on earth and I can climb into it and I can say that it is a bad vehicle. It does happen. Even your favorite manufacturer is going to make a bad vehicle. We spoke about it recently with the BMW and that 2 Series Grand Coupe. It's a bad vehicle for the brand, despite how many good vehicles they do have. Every now and then they're going to miss the mark. I'm not saying that the Forester misses the mark. It has a few shortcomings. It has a few quirks. For me, the quirk is the fact that it is only available with a CVT gearbox. The one caveat there is it is a very good CVT gearbox, but it does result in slightly stunted performance, especially up here at the reef, with the naturally aspirated engine sort of struggling a little bit. I do like it. It's very agreeable. If it was my money, would I put it in the driveway? Probably not. It is up against some tough competition, and I think the competition possibly is going to pip it in my mind. So it's going to be a slightly tougher sell for Subaru, considering the current, economic.
Because of capability or because it's the Subaru?
Brand perception. A lot of brand perception. Dealer network is slightly smaller than some of its competitors. It is going to go up against things like the Honda CR-V. It is going to go up against the Mazda CX-5. There is another one that I was also taking a look at that was also very Toyota RAV4. And I mean, if you think of just Toyota's place in South Africa, it's a tough one to really compete up against.
And the price of this Forester?
So the new Sport is going to go on sale, and I say is going to go on sale because we had the fortunate opportunity of driving a pre-launch. It's going to launch towards the end of the month, middle to end of the month. There's going to be a bit of a soft launch, so you should see them in dealerships. Forester Sport is going to cost you 600,000 Rand.
Well, I mean, I would have thought it would have been a little bit more expensive than that, given given what it's up against, the RAV4, CX-5, and CR-V. I don't know what your take is, but 600,000 Rand, not a bad price given it's an imported vehicle, right?
No. Very competitively priced. It's backed by a very decent warranty that is 5 years, 150,000. You are going to get a couple of manufacturers that are going to offer a little bit more, but Subaru as a whole, as long as you don't tinker with them, will run like a Swiss watchmaker's train schedule. It's just going to be on the money. It is not going to miss a beat. I remember, admittedly, many years ago, and times have changed, but it was a vehicle that was rather despised by mechanics. Not because it's difficult to work on, but because they never see them. They never make any money off of them. And many of
interesting
the
take.
older Forester and Outback owners will sit there and tell you that the biggest concern that they've had is maybe a squeaky electric window after 15, 20 years, or a little rattle from the backboard after, however many years of ownership. Generally, they run very reliably, and they will run well into the hundreds of thousands of kilometers.
Very interesting. And then very finally, Chad, your overall rank out of 10.
So I do like the vehicle. It has a couple of shortcomings. It has a couple of pros that work in its favor as well. For that reason, I'm going to have to go with a nice sort of middle of the road, but erring on the side of favorable, a 7.
A 7 out of 10. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our expert journalist, Chad Lückhoff, giving the Subaru Forester Sport a 7 out of 10. Then, Chad, I suppose that is it for the Subaru Forester Sport. Is it up on AutoTrader?
So as I said, it hasn't launched just yet, so we can expect to see it up on AutoTrader in the coming weeks. We're looking at about 2 to 3 weeks before you'll start seeing them out there. And there are going to be new deals. You may find a demo deal here and there. But as I say, with a slightly smaller dealer network, you can expect to see new models for sale on AutoTrader within the next few weeks. I also have a full video review coming, and that will be coinciding with the launch in about 2 weeks' time.
Lovely stuff. So if you don't get to see one in person, at least go and visit AutoTrader's content platform and go and see the features, trim levels, depreciation, Chad's opinion, and much, much more on autotrader.co.za. Thank you very much, Chad. Really nice to have seen you again. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Chad Lückhoff, our special and very experienced motoring journalist reviewing the Subaru Forester Sport. Wandile. Cheers, Chad. We are into that time of the show where we review some of the questions that some of our consumers have asked us. What is the first question?
Correct. Always interesting things come in. And the first question this week is there any risk in buying a car from a non-franchise dealer? So for instance, buying a Ranger from a BMW dealership.
Very interesting question. So is there any risk? The answer is there's risk everywhere and there's no risk everywhere. Okay, so it's a bit of a loaded question because, you can't say that a franchise dealer is going to present no risk, and you can't say that a non-franchise dealer is going to present risk. So, I think generalizing, tarring a non-franchise dealer with that brush is not fair. I know personally a number of non-franchise dealers who probably do a better job than most other dealers out there. So
I was about to say the same.
Exactly. So the trick is, in my opinion, if you buy a car from any dealer, it doesn't matter what dealer it is, do your homework on the dealership. Has the dealership built a brand? Ask yourself that question. Go onto Facebook and go and see what other people are saying about that dealership. Go and do some snooping and checking. Go onto Instagram, go onto LinkedIn, go onto all of the social media platforms, and go onto Hello Peter and go and see what the public are saying about the dealership. Go onto the dealership's website. Are they a digital dealer? Do they provide good service? Go and check it out. Go and visit the dealership without visiting the car initially and just take it in. And make up your mind that way. I suppose the second part of this Zway's question is, how reliable is the 2019 upward Ford Ranger Wildtrak for long-term ownership, like 10 years? And that second part of that question I'll answer in the following way. Today's day and age, there's no such thing as a bad car. And any
definitely.
second-hand car depends very much on how it was treated in the past.
By the first time, yeah. By the previous owners.
Exactly. So depending on how, like you would check out any dealership, you could by and large buy a non-franchise car from any dealership. So if you're buying this Ford Ranger Wildtrak from BMW dealership, for instance, it doesn't mean that BMW dealership is bad. Just do your homework.
Yeah, just depends on the dealership. Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly. Next question.
Next question is from Yaku, who's asking contract. It just says contract is the way he titled this question. So essentially, Yaku wants to buy a car for his son. He's applied for financing. It's been approved. but he just wants to know if there's a type of contract that will allow him to sort of separate himself from his son. So in the case where the son, for instance, defaults from payments, is there a way or a contract that can kind of ensure that the son is liable for the financing and not necessarily him?
So the short answer is no. And the reason for that is more than likely the reason that the father's name is on the contract is because the son can't get finance. Okay. So the banks and financial institutions are more than likely looking for another way to secure the debt. And they're looking to the father. Okay, so if the father's name is required to be on the contract by the bank, there isn't an easy way out of that. The bank's not going to renege. If your son defaults on the payment, unfortunately, the bank is going to come after you. That's just the way it works. Yes. But part of the question, which is a little bit confusing, is, as you mentioned, it says a type of contract that will be valid that can be used between myself and my son if anything happens to me or him. Now, what I don't understand what happens to me or him means. If you are nervous about, passing away, either of you, you can take out life insurance. So take out life insurance on your life or on your son's life, so that if one of you do pass away, the life insurance pays out and you can settle the debt. So those are my two kind of 2-minute takes on Yaku's question, Wandile.
Super interesting. Thank you for that. Lastly, how does purchasing a car that has minor hail damage affect insuring it?
Xavier, this is an interesting question because I'll answer it from a medical point of view. And that is, very often medical aids won't accept you with a pre-existing condition. They will accept you. Let me rephrase that. They will accept you, but they will exclude the pre-existing condition. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people have come across that in their lifetimes. You have a heart condition you've had cancer or you've got a pre-existing condition. Medical aids will exclude that for at least a period of time, if not indefinitely.
Yeah.
Now, I would imagine that insurance companies would do almost exactly the same thing in the following way. A car that's got hail damage is going to have a lower retail value.
Of course.
And I would imagine that
it's damaged.
It's damaged, exactly. So the insurance company will make a note of that, and you'll never be able to claim for hail damage on that car.
Because it's there already. At least they don't know. Where exactly
they'll exclude it from any claims in the future. Well, I'm afraid, Wendy, that's all we have time for, and that's brought us to the end of the show. So it's been epic, and as usual, my name is George Mienie, and I was joined by Wandile Sishi as usual. Cheers, Wandile. See you next time.